What's up, everybody? Welcome to Big Blue Avenue. I'm your host, Tom Scavetta, joined alongside a returning guest and tonight's co-host, Johnny Montalbano from Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Johnny, thank you so much for hopping on the show. It's great to be back with you here tonight.
Hey, Tom. How do we do this again? It's been a little while. Yeah. Good to be back on with you. Filling in for Sam. Sam, we miss you, but honored to fill in for you. And yeah, I'm doing great, Tom. I got to tell you, it's been, like you said, it's been a while. I haven't done a sports show in general since January. It's been a very busy year for me. For the most part, a good year. Obviously, it's been a challenging one if you've been following me on my social media pages. But it's great to be on with you and have some fun here and talk about a team that, let's be honest, right now is actually fun to watch. I have to be honest with you. It's been a fun year so far, and it's great to be on with you tonight to talk about it.
Absolutely. And folks, if you have any questions for Johnny and I throughout the course of the night, feel free to drop them in our comments section below. We'll get back to you as soon as we can. And if you're new to the channel, make sure to check us out here on Big Blue Avenue on YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter. This is a sub-show of Review and Preview Sports. Make sure to check out our Facebook page at Review and Preview Sports, where you can catch Big Blue Avenue every Wednesday night throughout the football season. And Johnny, I think not only is it great to have you back, but it's great to have you back with the Giants coming off a victory. And that'll sort of dive us into our first segment here, our Week 5 key takeaways from this game. And I think to me what was most impressive, outside of the first drive, Eric Gray fumbling at the goal line and they run it back for 100 yards, it barely felt like Seattle had the ball the entire game. And I think that is a testament to Brian Daboll's play calling ability, staying out of third and long, and to be quite honest with you, Daniel Jones has turned the corner again. It seems like once his job is on the line, once everybody wants his neck, Johnny, he responds. And it's been that way for the last 6 years. One word to describe this man at this point, he's an enigma. And that's exactly what he is.
Yeah, Tom, you kind of stole the words right out of my mouth there. I even would go back to the first drive for a second because, yeah, it sucks what happened at the end there with the fumble at the half-inch yard line and then running it back. But the fact that opening drive was a very long, methodical drive, and I think that's the kind of offense that you like to see from this Giants team. And, it was hard to feel confident going into that game Sunday because you were without Malik Neighbors, who's been an unbelievable rookie so far. A lot of great rookies for the Giants so far, but you didn't have him. You didn't have Devin Singletary. You were going into a very tough place to play there, the 12th man there at Lumen Field in Seattle. But the one thing I had a hope about was the Seattle defense, which is not good, and you saw that on Sunday. And yeah, to me, it starts with two guys on the team that have been talked about a lot here in the last year or two. Daniel Jones has been talked about since he ever got drafted, and Brian Daboll. And to be fair, those two guys have been doing a phenomenal job. I mean, I'm going to put away that Week 1 game against the Vikings, maybe because the Vikings are actually a legitimate 5-0. I think this team has been, with the talent that they have on this roster, they are competing. They are making it a game in all these games so far, and I think that's pretty much all you can ask for through the first 5 weeks.
100%. And I think, like you mentioned, those two pieces, the head coach and the quarterback, very important to a team's success. And Jones handled the blitz very well. And that's also in partial thanks, Johnny, to the continuity of this offensive line. The same starting 5 offensive linemen have played every snap this season. All 339 offensive snaps have been played by the same 5 offensive linemen. Now, John Runyon has an illness. He missed practice today, but he has not missed the snap in his entire 4+ year career thus far. I mean, Johnny, I haven't really spoken to you since last season, but the Giants' offensive line is good for the first time since Super Bowl 46, if we're being honest with each other.
Yeah, that's not a reach to say that, Tom. And in this day and age in the NFL, where the offensive lines, I think, have been, getting worse and worse. Now you could say that's twofold. That's because the defensive players are getting stronger and faster. That's one thing, but I think that's very hard to accomplish with the way that the NFL is today. That you have those same 5 guys, and those guys are allowing Daniel Jones, the opportunity to not only sit out in the running back, but you saw Jones do something on Sunday that you haven't really seen him do a lot, and that's throw deep downfield and be successful at throwing it downfield, and that contributes to that great line. And yeah, I think it always starts with both sides of the ball, the trenches, and the offensive line has been great so far. It's not a reach what you just said there.
No, absolutely. And I think the development of John Michael Schmitz in year number 2 is very imperative to this unit's success. And in my personal opinion, Johnny, the biggest offseason move for Big Blue, the signing of right tackle Jermaine Illuminor, who, in my personal opinion, we know Andrew Thomas is the best lineman on this team. But through the first 5 weeks, he's been the best one. 40 pass block snaps last week, not a single pressure, an 84.2 pass pro grade. And it just seems to me that edge of the line is sealed up, and it's allowing Jones to step up in the pocket and give him more time. And, he looked free last week, Jones. He was able to hit Wandale on those short intermediate patterns. He hit Slayton twice on the deep ball. He hit Theo Johnson over the middle of the field, and it translated, right? The offense was on the field for so long. The defense was so well rested, and they looked outstanding. I mean, look, Dexter Lawrence had 3 sacks, and they sacked Geno Smith 7 times, Johnny. Yeah. 7 times. That doesn't happen on accident. We have to give Shane Bowen his flowers.
Yeah, absolutely. I said this after I was watching the game with my friends up at my favorite bar last Sunday. I think this was the best overall game the Giants have played in a very, very long time. If we want to be honest, I think the best game they've played since the 2022 playoff game against the Vikings. I think it's been that long because there have not been many positives with this team over the last year or so, but you saw it come all together. And if this continues, I don't know if they'll be able to win every game, but they'll be able to compete like they've done here for the last 4 weeks. And with this roster and the way this team has been lately, I think that's pretty much all you can ask for.
100%. And I think, too, it dates back to the meat and potatoes of this team, the recipe to success in previous years, shoring up both sides of the trenches. The Giants, did you know, ladies and gentlemen, the Giants lead the NFL in sacks through 5 weeks? The Giants.
I love
whoa.
Yeah, Dexter Lawrence, Kayvon Thibodeau.
Pinnock.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a great thing to see because it reminds you of what made them so successful in their 2 Super Bowl runs. I mean, now I'm not saying that they're as good as those 2 teams, but you had that, and then also the team that made the wild card that won a playoff game back in 2022. So it's in a very, very important year for Jones and Brian Daboll. I mean, you're seeing right now that those 2 have done a great job with who they have to work with.
Yeah, and I think, too, it dates back to Daboll calling the plays, the defense looking really good. And I want to highlight Dexter Lawrence here quickly, folks, and shout out to Deanna Cairns for the comments saying, "Let's go Giants."
Right, yeah, Big Blue.
Thank you, Deanna. Look, 23 pressures for a guy who weighs 340 pounds, who's listed as 340. He told, I forget who it was, AJ Ross, that he weighs 360. That it's not normal. The way he was trash talking to the offensive line a little bit in a lighthearted way, saying, you need help, you need to double team me, this, that, the other thing. Do you think he's the best defensive tackle in the league? Because I'll be honest with you, he's looked like it, and it's not just this season. It was the season before that, and it was really all of 2022 as well that got him his 4-year contract extension.
Yeah, Tom, exactly. It's not just been a 1-year wonder here with Dexter Lawrence. This has been 2-3 years right now. He wasn't really talked about a lot last year because there was just so many struggles with the team. But it reminds me again, like I said, 2 years ago, and he's taking that to another level. And maybe we have to give to the, with Wink Martindale not being the defensive coordinator anymore, maybe we have to give the coordinators credit too. And I love the fact that at the start of the year, Daboll took over the offensive play calling as well, like you said. So, coordinators we've seen that with some teams in the AFC East for sure. How having the right coordinators or the wrong ones can make or break your team.
100%. And it's like we haven't heard Mike Kafka's name at all this season on the broadcasts. He's been non-existent. Like, I don't know what he's doing. Is he the practice coordinator? Is he, just listening on the headset upstairs in the booth? I haven't seen him once on TV this whole season. I haven't seen him. So I don't know where he is, but it's working.
It's working. Right?
One thing I wanted to ask you, so Deonte Banks, a guy who I was fearing a sophomore slump with him, and those fears started to come true the first 4 weeks of the season. But last week, boy, did he really rise up to the occasion. 91.2 coverage grade, only allowed 2 catches on 5 targets for 17 yards, going up against DK Metcalf. And Johnny, he was giving up touchdowns to Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb. I mean, it was Justin Jefferson. It was bad the first few weeks of the season. Not only that, this week he responded with 3 pass breakups, a forced fumble. Now, granted, we're just seeing a lot more of that 3 safety look, which I don't know if you saw that. Dane Belton was in the game a lot more, and Micah McFadden was in the game a lot less. So they were doing the 5 DBs with 1 backer with the 3 high safety. And I think, Johnny, it was allowing Banks more time to do what he does best, press man coverage, jam at the line. If he gets beat, that's okay. You have safety help. And, again, that also worked. And Jerome Henderson, who's been here since the Pat Shurmur days, has really done a fine job with this young guy.
Yeah, absolutely, Tom. And I was, like you said, fearing the sophomore slump a little bit, but you saw his name and his jersey a lot on Sunday, and that's a great thing to see. And I think that's something that's going to be very, very important going forward here, especially with the matchup that we got coming up on Sunday. So, again, just part of about the many great things that we take away from this game on Sundays. Again, the most complete game this team has had in a long time.
Absolutely. You couldn't have said that any better. Now, although the Giants controlled most of the game, they started to play a little sluggish in that fourth quarter. They were letting Seattle get back into it. They were getting big chunk yardage plays. It all came down to a potential game-tying field goal for Jason Myers, and it was blocked by Isaiah Simmons, who wound up winning NFC Special Teams Player of the Week. Your thoughts on his performance and sort of like his role on this team now?
Well, it goes back to again, part of this game is, even the special teams get a big play and get talked about. Now, when I saw that in real time, the first thing I thought of was, gosh, I hope he didn't either jump the gun or didn't hit the player, because, of course, it would have been our luck that a great play would have been negated by a penalty. But, I mean, look, again, it goes to show you, I love the fact that he was a special teams player of the week, because that was a big swing too. I mean, let's be honest. We were looking at possibly a tie game, and that fourth quarter was very nerve-wracking, like you said, Tom. Almost goes back to what we against the Browns earlier in the year when we played very, very well, but allowed Cleveland to get back in the game in the fourth quarter. I mean, you're talking that was about a 9-point swing there with that great block and run back. And again, that's what's made this game awesome. On Sunday, you got contributions from offense, defense, special teams. Definitely deserve to be the player of the week, although it was a little bit nerve-wracking because you were bracing for the fact that could have been negated.
You couldn't have put that any better. And winning in Seattle is not easy, guys. And I think this is credit to, Joe Shane, his drafting, his free agent signings. We saw Matthew Adams play his first reps with Big Blue, sort of taking on that Carter Coughlin role from last season. And now it's the rookie class. It shines once again. Now, the Giants had 6 draft picks this year, and 5 out of those 6 are playing like stars right now. And the 6th started a game week 1. He has our only interception on defense in Darius Muasau, but the contributions of course, Malik Neighbors, who missed this game, Tyrone Tracy, Theo Johnson, the 2 secondary guys, and Newman and Phillips. Just talk to me, maybe specifically pointing out Theo and Tyrone, Johnny, because before this week, those 2 guys really weren't that well known.
No, they were not. And, it goes – this almost see, this rookie class is reminding me a lot of Dable's first year here because you were getting contributions from Wandell and Bellinger and elsewhere. And now you're getting obviously Malik Neighbors, who I know we're going to talk about the Bengal game coming up, but it looks like he's trending in the right direction, which is a great thing to see. But he has been everything you could have hoped for with that pick, and the guy that I wanted, by the way, in the draft at wide receiver. But yeah, it's an awesome thing to see, and maybe we do have to give Joe Shane some more credit because I know he has been under some heat too over the last couple of years, but his drafting since he's been the GM of this organization has been excellent. I mean, a lot of this the contributions you're getting are Joe Shane guys, so it's an awesome thing to see. And yeah, you didn't know it with Tracy because obviously Singletary's the main guy, but he came in and he was awesome. I mean, it's really no other way you can say it. He was amazing. He was awesome.
If you don't mind me asking, because I think we might be thinking of the same guy, which receiver did you want to draft at 6?
I wanted Neighbors.
Okay.
Yeah, ultimately Marvin Harrison would have been my guy, but between Neighbors or Roma Dunze, I wanted Neighbors every single time. And so I was thrilled when he was there. I was, obviously the other talk was were they going to go for QB, and I'm glad they went for the wide receiver. And because I watched, like you, Tom, I watch a lot of college football. I watched a lot when I was in New York. I especially watched it down here in South Carolina, and I loved Neighbors at LSU. I thought he was the perfect guy and the right fit for the team.
I love him too, and this draft class sort of has taken over. And you said it, and of course with Neighbors missing last week, the other Giants offensive weapon, and Devin Singletary missing last week, this bodes the question, Johnny. Should Tyrone Tracy start next week? Now, let me be clear before we dissect this question. I'm not asking, should Tracy be the number 1 running back? That's not the question. The question is, should Tracy start if Singletary's healthy but not 100% to go? Or if Singletary's fully healthy, would you give them 50-50 reps at this point? Because right now I think Tracy's deserved it.
Yeah, the Bengals don't stop the run real well at all, Tom. So yeah. I think you give him at least 50% unless Singletary is fully healthy. Now, unfortunately, we were down this road with the Cowboys a couple of weeks ago where they couldn't stop the run, and Singletary only ran for 25 yards or so. So I would absolutely put Tracy in there at least at 50-50. That's been part of the success for any team is if you can run the ball and keep that defense on the field. And we know the situation with the Bengals, how they can't stop a nosebleed. So absolutely, I would be putting him out there for sure.
Yeah, big fan of Tyrone Tracy. And a quick shout out, Kevin Xavier saying, "Let's go Giants." Appreciate you, Kevin.
Good to see you.
Great to see you there in the comments section. So Sam, who's not here tonight, typically puts together our New York Giants Player of the Week graphic. And in honor of her, Johnny, we can go through this here together.
Sure.
So this week there was several different options, and Dexter Lawrence had a career game. We didn't choose him because of the magnitude of the game, and he always plays well. I want to give it to somebody that, fans are always getting on, a guy who has been the most polarizing name in the NFL the last 6 years because of his on-the-field play, I should say, in Daniel Jones. And Johnny, these stats over the last 4 games for him, 6 touchdowns to 1 pick. His numbers against the blitz this week looked really good. I mean, you guys can read these numbers here. There's no reason for me to read them off. But, Johnny, we were talking about this pre-show. Are you starting to see the 2022 version of Daniel Jones again, despite coming off the ACL?
It's looking like that, Tom. Yeah, I mean, I'm not ready to go fully there, but it's definitely trending in the right direction. And I actually think it's amazing because, he tore his ACL late in the year last year. And you definitely were expecting some rust coming back there in week 1 against the Vikings. But I think you're also looking, like I said at the start, that I think the Vikings are a very real and dangerous team. But it's definitely trending in the right way. And it all starts with the line. because if Jones is not scrambling for his life, and I don't care how good you are at quarterback. I mean, if you don't have the offensive line to protect you, then you're going to look awful. I think there's only 2 quarterbacks in the entire NFL that have been able to survive with a bad offensive line, and one of them we're actually going to be playing on Sunday, and Burrow, the other one being Mahomes. But yeah, he looks. There are signs that are showing you that he's going back towards 2022 Daniel Jones, which it'll be fun because then you're going to have a very interesting question to ask in the offseason, but we'll get to that when we get there. But yeah, there's definitely some signs, Tom, with the line, the running back play you hope Singletary can morph back to what it was like last year, but Tracy stepped in and done well, and he's getting his tight ends involved like he did 2 years ago. So it's you're seeing the signs there, and this whole team in general. I'm not going to say they're as good as 2022, but there are a lot of signs that remind you of this team from 2 years ago.
There are signs, and I think, again, Johnny, if we're going to see that 2022 version of this team, it starts with a win next week against the Cincinnati Bengals. And this week, the Giants are getting a little bit healthier. Linebacker Deontay Johnson, eligible to return from IR, the UDFA out of Toledo from last year. They have not activated him yet. Panthers signed Cade Mays from the Giants practice squad to their active roster. That leaves the Giants room to re-sign Benton Whitley to the practice squad after releasing him. Gunnar Olszewski also is eligible to return. They have not activated his window yet as well. I think after seeing Amir Smith-Marset muff that one punt, I think it was this past Sunday, Johnny, or the week before, I'm totally okay if they move on from him and put Gunnar back there. Definitely the better player. I think the Mets just won the NLDS, if I'm not mistaken.
I'm looking at it on the screen right here. Yes. So.
Oh, yeah.
And yes, one step closer to our Subway World Series.
I love it. I love it. I'm going to have to watch the highlights after the game. I saw the Grand Slam, but I want to see the celebration.
Yes, absolutely. Awesome thing to see. Great thing for New York sports in general, which has been through not a lot of great things here in the last several years, for sure.
100%. Speaking of not so great things, Kayvon Thibodeau had surgery on his wrist this morning.
Yeah, a little bit of a surprise. This totally didn't see this coming, but yeah, a little bit of a blow here, especially against a team in the Bengals who has a tough time protecting Burrow. Thibodeau would have been very, very valuable in this game Sunday.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a problem. But Azeez has been playing well. Yeah. The question is, Boogie Basham, who's been a healthy scratch the first 5 weeks, do you make him active as that fourth edge? Do they throw Patrick Johnson in there, back end body of the roster? There's guys that I think can play, but it'll be up to Azeez. And I think Boogie Basham to play that Azeez role a little bit. You may see more of Isaiah Simmons too, possibly off the edge, the Swiss Army knife. I would love to see that. Another comment here, Gerald, appreciate the comment saying, "Let's go Giants."
Yeah, thank you, Gerald.
A lot of "Let's go Giants" tonight. So,
hey, we're all coming out very positive, very excited off the game on Sunday. I mean, we're definitely allowed, and got a very cool matchup here on Sunday night.
Cautious optimism. Speaking of that matchup on Sunday night, Johnny, Bengals are 3.5-point favorites, 1-4, hosting our 2-3 Giants. The last time these two teams met, 2020, where Brandon Allen started for the injured Joe Burrow. The Giants won that game. As I like to go over my history, Cincinnati leads the all-time series 6-5, but the Giants have won the last 2 meetings. And the last 2 years, they've played the Cincinnati Bengals. They've had pretty good second half of the season, so definitely intrigued about that. Bengals are 0-4 all-time on the road against the Giants. And the one last thing, brutal overtime loss last week to Baltimore. They are starving for a win, Johnny. Their season is on the brink.
Yeah, they are one. This whole year is hard to put into words, Tom. And I think the Bengals are a prime example of that. I mean, they looked awful against the Patriots week 1, but this team, when you look at it, is good enough to be 2-3, 3-2, and instead they're 1-4. The coaching has been suspect. The defense has been awful. The offensive line, which Joe Burrow has not had an offensive line at all since he's been an NFL quarterback. It's criminal what that organization has done not to protect him. But, really, this is not about Joe Burrow, because if you watch the game Sunday, I mean, that was one of his best games you almost could say one of his best games of his career. You're getting, obviously, these 2 big guys, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase involved. By the way, we're going to have a lot of LSU in this game Sunday night. But, yeah, and, it's just it's really crazy. The one saving grace probably for the Bengals is the fact that they've only played 1 game in division. It's not like last year when they started out 0-2 and both of those losses were in division, and then Joe Burrow obviously gets hurt. Joe Burrow actually looks healthy, which I think is a great thing. But, this is really – I mean, when you speak of, desperation, and it's something I've used a lot when I made my football picks this year on social media, I've looked at teams that are desperate in these kind of matchups. And to me, the Bengals are definitely the more desperate team going into this game Sunday night for sure. And, I got to think that, T. Higgins and Jamar Chase are going to have an impact in this game. I think at the start, you're looking at, can this Giants defense continue to pressure the quarterback? And I think they certainly can, because we know this offensive line for the Bengals is not that good.
No, they're not. Left to right, it's Orlando Brown, Cordell Volson, Ted Karras, Alex Kappa, and first-round rookie Amarius Mims. So there are growing pains there, going up against Brian Burns, Dexter Lawrence, and possibly no Kayvon Thibodeau this week. It would be Azeez Ojulari, who, in my opinion, when healthy, is starting material, but he's never been healthy his first 3+ years in the National Football League.
Yeah.
Azeez would be key.
Give you another interesting nugget about this game, too. So in the last 3 weeks, the Bengals have scored 35 points per game, which is second best in the league. They're allowing 34.3 per game.
Explains a lot.
Yeah, I mean, could you see? And I'm probably bringing this up a couple of times here before the end of the night. The Giants don't play many shootout kind of games, so I don't know if this game's going to become a shootout, but the Bengals could make this a shootout because of how porous their defense is. But I don't know if that's going to benefit the Giants or not, because they have not played many shootouts the last several years. I mean, it's definitely been before this regime for sure.
Yeah, look, there's a lot of desperation. Neither of these teams has won a home game yet this year either. So benefit, I guess, road team based off that.
I wish this game was in. Call me crazy when I say this. I wish this game was in Cincinnati, because the one thing we've seen with this organization, and this even goes back to the 2 Super Bowl runs, you put them out on the road, they seem a lot more comfortable out on the road than they do at home. I don't know what it is. Going to Seattle, maybe one of the best things for them was to get away from all the craziness and go out west. I think we've seen that actually with a couple of teams this year, getting away from home and going out on the road, getting away from it all. So obviously it starts with that. I think what we spoke about just a couple of minutes ago with Tracy and Devin Singletary, the Bengals, not only the defense bad, they can't stop the run. I would expect. I think we're going to see a lot of running from this Giants team. I mean, I think you could even easily see 100+ yards between Tracy or Singletary. Depends if Singletary is going to be active for this game. I know that Malik Neighbors is trending in the right direction. The reports have been. I'm not sure the status about Singletary just yet, but I would be surprised if we don't see the Giants rush for over 100 yards here on Sunday night.
Absolutely. I'm excited to talk about it. And before we get into our keys of the game, we have a very special guest. And Sam actually told me about her, Johnny. So I want to bring her up here.
Well, Sam says it must be a good guest then. Yes.
Yeah, Sam always refers me to great people. Let's bring her up. New York Giants fangirl Adrianna joins the show. Welcome, Adrianna.
Hello.
Great to see you.
Thank you guys for having me.
Of course. So I want to first off learn a little bit more about you. I've been following your work for maybe a couple weeks now, and my co-host Sam, couldn't be here tonight. I'm here with Johnny, who's just as awesome. Um, where can people find your work, and can you tell a little bit about our fans the work that you do regarding the Giants, content-wise?
Yeah, so I grew up a Giants fan. My grandfather was a Giants season ticket holder, so whole family diehard Giants fans. Some of us more so than others, and I have lived in different areas where sometimes I've not been able to watch the Giants on TV. So my husband and I moved to Connecticut in end of 2020. When Joe Judge was doing his Joe Judge type of thing. And I have a group chat, with some of my insane family members where we were just back and forth all day about the Giants and like what was going on and that whole sort of thing. And I because I had recently moved to Connecticut, I was like, well, I'm in an area where I know there are other Giants fans. And previously I was living in Massachusetts. So like all of my husband is from there, all of his friends are Pats fans. So I'm like, now I'm with my people. I'm with Giants fans. So, but of course it's COVID. And I'm like, I'm trying to figure out how to connect with other Giants fans. So I started an Instagram page. It's called New York Giants Fangirl. And it's the same on TikTok, and then Instagram or Twitter is NYG Fangirl. But I basically just started it and was like, I am losing my mind watching this Giants team. And I know that everyone else has to be feeling the same way. Like, where are my local Giants people? So it kind of just started like that. And then the more that I kind of posted and talked to other Giants fans, I kind of felt like we were all having a similar complaint. Aside from the fact of the team being bad, it was like, and I know I still do this, is I have to go to 6 different beat writers to get information from practices that only the media are at, or to get injury updates or contract details or things like that. So I wanted to create a space where it was all in one place. So if you go to my Instagram, you're going to find everything. There's keys to win, injury updates, contracts, practice squad elevations, everything in one place. I just wanted to make it a good resource and place for other Giants fans that if they, wanted to know who was going to be elevated this week or whether or not, Tommy DeVito's going to play, they could find it all in one place. So that's how it started. And that's where it's at now.
Love Tommy DeVito. Love it.
I'm Italian, so.
Tommy D, yes.
Yes. Great player. Johnny and I, big fans. Yeah, I mean, look, it's been an interesting season. I think first football question, Johnny and I wanted to ask you. So 2-3, and not ideal, being under 500, but with the way the season started, expectations, tempered a little bit. I think we're in an okay spot at the moment. Brian Daboll taking over play calling. It seems like the offense has finally turned the corner a little bit, or maybe heading small footsteps in the right direction. What do you attribute that to? Is it Daboll's play calling? Is it Daniel Jones? Is it multiple things, or maybe something I didn't mention? What do you think it is?
I think it's a mix of everything, because if you look back at week 1 and even week 2 and week 3, you see kind of the different versions of Daniel Jones that we've seen over the years. Week 1 was the god-awful Daniel Jones that we're all like, we need a quarterback. And then week 2, he gets a little confidence and seems to be a little bit better. And, week 3, it's up and down. So I think part of it is he finally feels confident. And I don't know if it's because now at this point, it's been almost a year since the ACL that he finally feels like he's back to normal. I don't know what it is, but I feel like he's finally got that inner confidence that we saw in 2022. So I think that's part of it. I think part of it is also Daboll is seeing that the offensive line is protecting each other. Receivers are getting open. The run blocking is good. So he can run the offense the way that he wants it to be run. And I think in week 1, we didn't really see that. I think in week 2, we saw glimpses, but I think because all of the players are improving week after week, he's also feeling more confident because he's like, now I can do a flea flicker. Now I can have Jones attempt the 40-yard throw to Slayton. Like, now I can try these different sorts of things that either he tried and they weren't working, or he just didn't try them because he didn't feel like the team was in the right place to do it. So I think it's a mix of all of those things. Because even with the run blocking, like, there's no reason why we should have had 26 yards against the Cowboys in the run game, who's the worst run defense in the league. There's just no reason for it. So I think now they built the confidence up last week and they said, all right, we can go against a good defense. The offensive line can run block. Tyrone Tracy is a great runner. And now we can have some success, in different phases of the offense.
Yeah, and you were bringing up about 2022, and this team, minus the record, really is reminding me a lot of the 2022 team. And it really, like you said, with Daniel Jones, that it reminds me about him. But when you look at this team so far, when you see Jones, and you were talking about how he struggled in week 1, but what do you make about, it looks like he's getting better week over week.
Mm-hmm.
What are you thinking about not only that, but also like this whole team reminding me of looking like the 2022 team a little bit?
Yeah, my complaint with both teams is the drop balls still, because now we've got better talent at receiver. Like, you cannot keep dropping the balls. It's so frustrating. So that is something that really desperately needs to be cleaned up. And the fumbles from the running backs too. Like, you guys got to figure that out at this point in the season. But I feel like we're seeing the 2022 version, because last year was so god awful, but I feel like we're seeing an elevated version of that, because this offensive line is better than the 2022 offensive line. I even think that Daniel Jones, where he's at right now, is playing better than he was in 22. He's starting to get past the first reads, and he seems like he's processing a little bit better. And I think the biggest reason for that is that he's trusting the offensive line, which in 2022 they were okay compared to last year, but they weren't amazing. So I feel like even from then until now, for him, it must feel like there's a drastic change in blocking, especially when it comes to pass blocking, that he has time to settle in a little bit and make the decisions that he wants to make. And this is why, there are Daniel Jones truthers out there, right? Because you see him with a line that can block and you're like, maybe he's not a terrible quarterback. Like, he's good. He can make throws. He can do this. He can do that. So I think the offensive line was one of the biggest reasons as to why he's playing the way that he is, outside of, Dable and other things. But I really think for him, it's the offensive line. He's trusting what he's seeing, and he's actually trusting the fact that, he's got people in front of him who are blocking, and he's not getting killed every 3 seconds.
Well said. You mentioned getting past that first read. Week 1 didn't seem like that was happening. And the biggest thing, too, Johnny and I mentioned this earlier, 339 offensive snaps this year. All 5 offensive linemen have been on the field for every single one.
Knock on wood.
Yeah. I know Runyon has an illness. I don't know what it is. I'm not going to speculate, but I know he missed practice today with some sort of illness. Hopefully he's okay.
Yeah.
And I think, too, that allows the younger players to get more reps, like your Tyrone Tracy's, your Theo Johnson's, right? Because they're not always going to be your first read. Your first read is Malik Neighbors, and in this case, the Seattle game, it'll be Darius Slayton and Wan'Dale Robinson. And we saw that mixed and matched. We saw them split the targets Neighbors would normally get. But to highlight, Adrianna, on Tracy and Theo, 2 day 3 draft picks this year. I don't want to call them most definite hits just yet, but they're surely looking like it. What sticks out to you about each of them?
Well, for Theo, we've heard this a lot so far this year. Last year, and they talk about this as a whole as the smart, tough, dependable thing, right? Just like beat it into all of us like a dead horse. But you've heard them say a lot about resiliency, and I think that Theo is a really good example of that. And I think you could say that for a lot of the players, but the reason I say Theo is because up until this point, he, I think, had caught maybe 20% of the passes that had come his way, and not entirely all his fault. DJ has had some really awful throws this year, but this week, he went 5 for 5. He's the only receiver out of all of them that caught every single ball that came his way. So I think that shows a lot of the fact that, A, he's taking advantage of his opportunities. B, he's really learned the system and he knows what he's capable of doing. And C, that him and Daniel Jones have some sort of rapport already, which I think is so important. And the fact that he's getting open enough, he's catching the ball, and he's getting some yak yardage after that makes me feel like he is really going to be a key piece to this offense. And I know it is early on in the season, but I think we have seen things be so awful for this team, especially in week 1, that the fact that where they're at now, this is the football team that I expected them to be going this season. I mean, I thought they were going to go 10-7 because I felt like you've got the talent at this point, right? Like, it's not 2022 where you're throwing to Richie James and Kenny Golladay. Like, you've got better talent this time around on both sides of the ball. So there's no excuse if people are healthy. So I feel like we're finally getting to that point. I have a problem with Dable with the fact that it's taken 5 weeks for them to get there, which is another story. But, Tyrone Tracy is a guy that now all I hear from Giants fans is he's got to be the starter. I've seen enough of Motor. And I get it. But I think we also have to be realistic and understand who Dable is and know that he loves Motor. He's not just going to sit him just because Tyrone had one good game. So I would like to see a more balanced mix where 50-50, they are splitting the snaps. I think that's fair. And when Motor has a little bit of a history at this point of fumbling the ball, you got to give away some of his snaps to Tracy, who did nothing but good things last week.
Yeah, I think it's a good problem to have, especially going to play Cincinnati, who also cannot stop the run to save their lives.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about that, but also defensively, this defense so far has played remarkable, and it really all starts with Dexter Lawrence. He had an unbelievable game on Sunday. So, what do you think about Dexter and this defense so far through the first 5 weeks?
I love Dexter. And the fact that people last week were talking about maybe we should trade him, I was like, you're blasphemous. You're not a Giants fan. You can't give away our best player. I don't want to hear it. I don't care what we're getting back for him. You're not giving him away. He is so incredible to watch. And now, Aaron Donald was always a good player, but now he's out of the league. Dexter Lawrence is the guy. He is the guy to be. He is getting double and triple teamed and still has 6 sacks in 5 games. It's like unheard of. So he needs to be an all-pro this year. He needs to be a Pro Bowler. Like, enough is enough. I understand he's on the Giants. They're historically not a great team. Even if they don't win 10 games or whatever it is, he needs to be an all-pro because his talent needs to be recognized by everyone. And I think it's starting, the national media, is starting to really realize that 5 weeks in, what he's done for this team. But, it's interesting because the Giants defense is leading the league in sacks, which I think if you're watching the games week in and week out, obviously the Browns game, they had 8, and last week they have 7 against the Seahawks. But it doesn't feel like they have that many, at least for me. And I think part of that is because it's so spread out, and I did a Q&A today, and one of my responses was, I love the fact that this defense is doing so well, but I find it so interesting that Jason Pinnock has a sack, and Nacho and DJ Davidson and, Micah McFadden, and all these different players on defense, which I love. It's great. But the expectation for me, especially going into this year, was it's going to be Burns and Thibodeau who are going to be getting the sacks. So I really feel like they're finally playing as a cohesive unit, which is really fun to watch because, especially after last week, you feel like, all right, if they're not putting as much pressure on Geno, then you finally have some faith that Banks is going to make a play over on DK, and DK is not going to destroy the game like he's done in other games. So I think part of it was learning a new defense. Part of it is this defense is very young, but I'm really happy with where they're at. And I feel like the improvement week after week has been really impressive. Like I said, I'm still disappointed it's taken 5 weeks to get here, but it's not week 17, so it could be worse.
It's well said. You mentioned Deontay Banks and, Johnny transitioning to defense there. Banks was called out by his position coach, Jerome Henderson, this past week, saying, look, you got to play better. Play like that first-round pick, and that way you played your rookie season. Be aggressive with your hands, but don't, commit penalties within 5 yards. I felt like at times he was giving up these easy slant routes for touchdowns, whether it was Lamb or Cooper or Jefferson in week 1. I mean, last week, Banks really answered the bell and those 3 passes defended really stuck out to me. I guess asking you, what was the biggest difference you saw in his performance, and can he carry that with him into the next week and so on?
One of the complaints that I had going into the Seahawks game was I felt like it was glaringly obvious during the Browns game that he wasn't turning around to make a play on the ball. And, I'm not going to pretend to be a defensive expert when it comes to different positions, but when, we've all watched a lot of football, and when you watch these corners, the good corners in the league are having pass breakups, or they're making interceptions, or they're at least facing the ball so they can understand what's going on. And Banks, I really felt like was not doing that until this week. And maybe he watched extra film. Maybe it was more one-on-one time with Jerome Henderson. Maybe he just needed to get his head out of his butt. Like, I don't know what it was. It could have been all of those things, but maybe it was just the fact that Henderson called him out and he was like, oh, I can't get away with, being lazy anymore. But I feel like that was the biggest thing that I saw a difference on, because when you're not watching the football and where it's coming, how are you going to break up the pass? How are you going to try and intercept it? Like, you can't really make a great play on it, especially someone like him. It's only his second year in the league. He's not a top 5 corner. I don't expect him to be good enough to not look at the ball and still be able to make a play. So I felt like that was a really big step for him. And, the fact that he could do it against someone like DK brings me some confidence. Am I concerned about him going against Chase and Higgins? 100%. But I do feel like he's at least built up some confidence after last week to say, I can ride with DK, who's also one of the best in the league. I should be able to, at the least, keep up with these guys. I hope.
Yeah, I like it a lot, and that kind of segues into our keys to the game, Johnny. We're talking about it, and specifically, we don't know if Malik Neighbors is going to play this week. Mm-hmm. But personally, for me, and we could each give 1 or 2 each here on keys we think that'll put the Giants over Cincinnati, a starving team. Johnny and I were saying before we brought you up, Adrianna, get Malik Neighbors the ball if he's playing. The Bengals defense has allowed 10 touchdown passes this season, and we know all the rookie records he's set. We don't need to go over them super in depth. But Neighbors did not play last week, and he still leads the NFL with most 20-yard catches, with most receptions. He's that good. I'm just so impressed. Like, I've never seen a guy create this much separation or be this smart after the catch. Mm-hmm. The question is, can he stay healthy? Because we know Daniel Jones has little to no care for his body. He's going to put his body on the line every single week. He's going to take hits when he shouldn't. That's who he is. Mm-hmm. I don't want Malik Neighbors to get down that trend, but I also want Jones to have better ball placement as well. Yeah. So Neighbors isn't taking hits, where Neighbors can step out of bounds instead of trying to run through 2 people, let's say. So that's my key to the game. I mean, I really think getting Neighbors the ball is most important, especially to the fact that he didn't play last week. You want to get him the ball right away so he can get his feet wet. He might be a little rusty being off for a week. I don't know. We'll see. It's the NFL, right? Crazier things have happened, Johnny.
Yeah, I think a key for me, and Adrianna was bringing this up too, I think 50, and we brought it up too, I think if Singletary is going to play Sunday, I think him and Tracy that both go combined for 100 yards. This is a team in the Bengals that cannot stop the run. We said that with the Cowboys 2 weeks ago, and the Giants ran for like 27 yards. So I would love to see if they're both getting 50%, each go for a combined 100 yards. Also this Bengals defense, I mean, they can't stop the run. They can't get to the quarterback. So, I mean, this really, if you're looking at this, is kind of setting up in the Giants' favor. But I know Tom's talking about Neighbors, and I'd love to see him get 2. But I'd love to see the rushing attack go for over 100 yards here on Sunday night.
Yeah, I think this could be one of those games where they're very capable of doing that, and to have back-to-back weeks where you have over 100 yards on the ground would be huge. Something that I want to see from this offense again is them continuing to spread the ball around. And I think part of the growth that we've seen in Jones, I think part of that is because of Neighbors, but part of that is also not because of Neighbors. The first couple weeks, you want Neighbors to get all the targets, right? But at the same time, you don't want him to get killed. So, and also you finally have some other talent across the board on offense. Like I said, it's not Richie James and Kenny Galladay out there anymore. So I want to see them spread the ball around, because if they're smart on defense, they're going to double team Neighbors. Now, I don't think that's going to prevent Neighbors from catching the ball or from making plays, but I do want them to get some sort of semblance of like a balance on offense where they can run the ball successfully and they can throw the ball successfully. And part of throwing the ball successfully means that everyone's involved. Theo Johnson, who is a big target, which is really helpful for Jones. Neighbors, obviously, who's a speedster and a beast. And then you've got Wandale in the slot and you've got Slayton for the long routes. And who knows, maybe Hyatt. But I just like the idea of them spreading the ball around, because when you look at the Bengals, part of the reason why they have so much success is they have Higgins and Chase. So if you're double teaming one of those guys, you're leaving the other one open and they both can make a play. So obviously we don't have two of those guys. We don't have two Neighbors, but the fact that we do have a Slayton, Wandale, Hyatt, and Theo Johnson, and even Bellinger, like when he's involved sometimes here and there, to have that semblance of a balance, I think is really key. And honestly, I think that's why Jones had such a good game last week, was he couldn't force the ball to Neighbors every single time. And he was forced to spread the ball around, and it worked. And I feel like it was a confidence boost for everyone.
That's a great point too. And both of you guys have mentioned certain things where, look, the Bengals defense is not good. They're giving up 29 points per game. I mean, Johnny, Lamar chewed them up last week. And that's why they lost the game, really. I mean, you could argue special teams, no. Lamar Jackson chewed them up. They were unable to stop the run. They were without Sheldon Rankins, their best run-stopping DT outside of B.J. Hill, former Giant, by the way.
Of course.
Revenge week.
Yeah, right?
Oh, the B.J. Hill revenge game, yes.
Yeah. But then to add to that, too, I think pressuring Joe, because you sacked Gino 7 times last week. You lead the league in sacks. But, again, similar to the last 2 weeks, you're going up against young tackles. Marius Mims on the right side is a rookie. I know Thibodeau's out, but Brian Burns and Azeez Ojulari have to get there. Dexter Lawrence will get there, but the other two have to get there. Burrow has 5 or more passes of 40-plus yards this year. Adrianna, to your point, targeting Chase, targeting Higgins, targeting the slot guy from Princeton. That leads the league, those 40-plus yard passes. And you can't allow that to happen. Burrow leads the league in that. He leads the league in touchdown passes. So we know he's playing better than ever this year. He's playing like a top 3 quarterback right now, in my opinion. Unfortunately, he's playing on an awful football team this season, which begs me to ask both of you the question before we get into our players to watch. This is, just so you're both aware, there's going to be a very, very, I think, far-fetched question, but maybe it won't be after Sunday night's performance. And here it is. Should they at least consider it if they lose to the Giants? Because this is starting to get crazy here. I don't think it's entirely his fault. I think the players are not playing up to expectations, but we've seen this script one too many times. Last year, they got so far down the hole, and they couldn't come back from it, and it ruined their season. And they looked serviceable with Jake Browning out there. So I guess, Adrianna, we'll start with you here, and then Johnny.
This is tough because part of me feels like, the Giants should be 3-2 at the very least. They should be 4-1, like the Bengals in similar situations, right? Like these teams, especially, well, depending on the week, the offense, they have been playing better than what their record shows. And unfortunately, they just can't close out games, both of these teams. But I don't know. If it's a blowout, yes. Like if the Giants blow them out, then yes, he should probably go. But I think if it's close and it comes down to a field goal, I don't know, because I don't know if he has more experience as an offense or defensive coach. But after what happened with the Jets, I think it could be a possibility.
Well, see, Tom, there's a key word, though, in that question, it's consider, and the answer is yes.
Hmm.
I mean, considering it, yes. Should they fire him? No. I'll tell you right now, he's not the biggest one on the hot seat this week. That goes to Nick Sirianni in Philadelphia. I mean, if they don't beat the Browns on Sunday, if the Browns go down there and, with the mess they've in and beat them, I think Sirianni should be gone next Monday. But if you think about it here, with the talent that the Bengals have on offense, I mean, the two-headed monster, and, in the last couple of years, look, Burrow has not been healthy at times. We know that. Burrow's looked healthy all year. I know he didn't have Chase at the start of the year, and when you don't have one of them, if you don't have one of them, you basically don't have either of them. But now they're both there. Consideration is definitely in play, yes. Now, should they fire him? No. I don't think so. The one saving grace that the Bengals have so far this year is they've only played one game in division. Last year when they got off to their bad start, they already were playing 2 divisional games and lost both of them. That's essentially putting yourself in a very, very early hole. So I say there's definitely some consideration, but they should not fire him.
I'm with you. I think it's more of an end of the season type of deal. I wanted to throw it out there, pick brains just to see. But yeah, I think end of the season is probably more likely than this right now.
Yeah.
And looking
you
at
could have also said that, I'm sorry, Tom. You could have also said that about Doug Peterson at Jacksonville if they lost Sunday, and I think he's at least saved a couple of weeks. And now they go home for the next 2 weeks in London.
Absolutely, and I think too, looking at 3 of their 4 losses, the Chiefs, the Ravens, the Commanders, all teams with at least 3 wins or more. Those aren't bad losses. Washington is turning out to be a pretty good team this year. It's still early. They lost to the Patriots week 1. That was a bad loss. All right. I think almost every team has one bad loss a year, like loses a game they should not even be close to losing. And we already saw that with Baltimore to the Raiders. The Giants, I don't know if we've seen it yet, but hopefully we don't.
I would say the Commanders, we've already seen it, I hope.
Oh, true.
Because that game, I will never forgive them for losing that game.
No kicker.
So bad.
That's the one time you did Brian Dable this year.
Oh, awful.
You're right. That is the one time I was like, what the hell, Brian Dable? Like, why? I know. I guess they didn't think Jude was ready, but still, that's no excuse. I don't want to backtrack to 3, 4
listen,
weeks.
if you made us feel any better, what happened with the 49ers last week, too. They didn't have a backup kicker, and look what happened there.
Well, look at the way they played Washington. They played them well. They should have won. And Washington's in these games beating teams that we all thought might be better than them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it speaks volumes about us, the Giants. I think we're a better team than advertised.
Right, and that's what I was saying at the start of the show, Adrianna, was at the start of the if you look at this year so far, they looked awful against the Vikings, absolutely. But the Vikings are a 5-0 team right now. Ever since then, every game they've played, they've been competitive. And are they the most talented team let's just say in the NFC East? Are they the most talented team? No. But, I think Brian Dable's done the best job of any of the 4 coaches in the NFC East, considering, the talent that they have and what they've been playing with so far.
Yeah. Dable has really pissed me off this season, but I do feel like what we've seen from this team, especially in the last 3 weeks, like the way that they have kept games really closely and they've played well and they've battled and, just come so short of winning. I do feel like he does deserve a lot of credit for that. And especially what happened in Seattle, the fact that they didn't have a single false start. There were no awful penalties like there were some of the other weeks. It was more disciplined football. And I felt like they were well coached and well prepared, which week 1, week 2, week 3 didn't necessarily feel like that.
Yeah.
100%. And with that being said, before we get into our game predictions, let's each do one player to watch for each team on both sides of the ball. So 2 for each team, 1 on each side of the ball. We will do Cincinnati first. Adrianna, will start with you, then go to Johnny, and then clockwise.
Okay. Predictions?
So we'll do the players, and then we'll do the predictions after this. So
okay.
give the Bengals 2 players first.
It's got to be Burrow because I think he's playing, some of the best football that he's played in a while. And he's one of those guys that I don't think you can ever count out. But, coming off an injury and stuff, you're never really so sure. And I feel like he's found that groove. And I would pick Chase just because I'm a little bit worried about how the corners are going to be able to handle him, especially knowing that Thibodeau is going to be out. And, I think Aziz is good. They're probably going to elevate Tom on Fox. He's okay. But I'm a little worried that the defensive line, if they don't get home, that means the corners are going to have to do a lot of legwork this week. So that makes me a little nervous.
Yeah, that's where I was going at on offense. Chase is the guy to me. I mean, I know Higgins is great too, and obviously Joe Burrow, but it really all starts with Chase because that's one of the best connections because both of them went to LSU, so that's usually the case. The one player I'm going to watch on defense, and if you've been watching the Bengals this year, his name's come up a lot, and that's Cam Taylor-Britt on defense. He had an unbelievable interception in the Chief game a couple of weeks ago, and he's somebody that could be a factor on that defensive side for sure.
Yeah, I know last week, really bad performance for him, allowing 93 receiving yards. They just placed Dax Hill on IR. DJ Turner has not looked good either. All three of those guys have been hot or cold. For me, I'm going to go Trey Hendrickson. Bengals have the second least amount of sacks in the NFL, but Hendrickson's a guy that can wreak havoc. I'm excited to see him. He's got 3 of those 6 sacks. And then T. Higgins. I like T. Higgins a lot because Tay Banks, if he continues to play well, him and Chase, it could be a bit of a chess match. What's the Giants' biggest weakness? It's CB2. I mean, Cordell Flotts looked better. Adoree back healthier. Drew Phillips is healthy in the slot. But which one of those guys can consistently match with T. Higgins? At least we know Banks is going to be on Chase more often than not. I don't know who's covering T. Higgins. And personally, I think that's a problem. That's a big problem. And he's only played in 3 games. His numbers are pretty good. He's averaging 6 catches per game. He's got 2 touchdowns on the year and nearly 200 yards. So for a guy who's only played 3 games, that is pretty impressive. So, those are my 2 for the Bengals. And now we'll go this way. Johnny, you give your 2 this way. Johnny, give your 2 Giants ones, and then we'll go to Adrianna.
Offensively, I'm going to the running back position. I'm looking to see whether it's going to be one or both of them or 50-50. Again, I think they both need to have a combined 100 yards here because one of the things I'm thinking about in this game is I don't want to get into a shootout with the Bengals because I think they will actually win that kind of game. I actually am looking for this to be kind of a lower scoring game, and I think what they need to do is like what they did on that opening drive against the Seahawks, minus the fumble at the half-yard line, is control the clock, keep that defense out there, and keep Burrow off the field. We say this a lot about great quarterbacks. The best way to neutralize a great quarterback is to keep them off the field. And if they can, run the ball against a very poor run defense there in the Bengals, I think that'll help. I think if they had a great running attack, they could have beaten the Cowboys 2 weeks ago, but we won't go back on that. So I'm looking at the running back position there. I think defensively, I think I'm going to put an obvious one out there. I think it's going to be Dexter Lawrence, especially with Thibodeau. And I think that actually is a pretty significant injury in this matchup. I'm looking at, again, a bad offensive line it's criminal that Joe Burrow has not been able to get an offensive line since he's been in Cincinnati. But I'm looking at Dexter Lawrence to once again maybe create havoc again and maybe have another couple of sacks in this one. So I think we're going to look at the running back for the Giants, and I'm looking at Lawrence on defense.
For the offense, I'm going to pick Jones because I think that whether or not Neighbors is back, I think he needs to continue to spread the ball around and he's got to nail those deep throws again. And I feel like he's at the point where he has some confidence in himself that if he can take it one step further and build on that, we're going to see success from this offense. We saw it last week. And again, I think if they can continue to build on it, I think that's going to be one of the reasons why we could win this game. I think that unless the defense, now they've done a really good job of holding opponents to 28 points or less, but I think it's going to come down to either Adoree or or I mean, it's probably going to be Adoree or Flott and how they do against Higgins, because if Banks does a really good job of shutting down Chase, which would be amazing, you're still leaving Higgins open. And, if they have to use those two guys to double team him, then so be it. But, we've seen better play out of both of them. But if they can't, keep the two of those guys to 100 yards or less, I think we're in trouble.
We all have our blunders once in a while. Talking without the mic on there. Look, for me, Giants-wise, offensively, I'm probably looking at – I'm a big tight end guy. It's my favorite position on an NFL roster. It always has been. Theo Johnson is my guy. Look, I love Bellinger too, but Bellinger is who he is at this point. He's a blocking tight end who can make a catch or two when they give him the ball. Theo Johnson was brought in to be a vertical threat. He's got good hands. He's really good with his hips. And he's not an awful run blocker either. I was talking to somebody about this in the past. His film at Penn State is not bad when you take a deep look into it. But, last week, 5 catches for 48 yards against the Seahawks. Impressive. And if tight ends are catching the ball on a Daniel Jones-led offense, that means he's got time to throw the football. They're not doing that naked bootleg rollout like they did in 22 where they throw to Bellinger or Myrick and get like 5-6 yards. They're not doing that. They're actually throwing vertical down the field now, which is good to see. And defensively, one thing we saw last week, Johnny and I were talking about this before, is the 3 safety look. So there was less of Micah McFadden and there was more of Dane Belton. So in turn, I think that helps Deontay Banks out a lot. For me, I'm looking at Jason Pinnock. I want to see where he wants to line up on the defensive side of the ball. He loves to flirt by the line of scrimmage the entire game. He's got 3 sacks for a safety. We're going to see Belton freeloading a lot, and then we're going to see Tyler Nubin making tackles in the backfield, run stopping. I want to see where Pinnock lines up, because if we see that 3 safety look, that allows Pinnock more freedom to move wherever he wants, and if you want to stack the box. I'm looking at Jason Pinnock on defense. A little bit 2 wild card players there, but I think they could have big factors in this game.
Yeah.
Quickly here, because I know we have New York baseball on tonight. I know we want to get to that. So we'll go to our game predictions here. Adrianna, we will start with you. Quickly here. Mike Gesicki, Zach Moss did not practice today for the Bengals. Obviously, Kayvon Thibodeau did not practice for the Giants. Neither did Malik Neighbors. I know Singletary was doing some light stuff, but not much at all. So those are the key injuries as we go into Thursday morning. So we will get our game predictions at this time. Adrianna, Johnny, and then myself.
Okay. I think the Giants can scrape out a win. I do think it's going to be close. I am waiting for the day when the Giants are good enough to just blow people out and they're up by like 10 or 14 in the last like 4 minutes of the game so I can relax and not be stressed the whole time. I don't think this is going to be it. I hope I'm wrong. But I think that it could be like a 31, 27, 28 type of game. I think the Giants could win it on a last minute field goal in their home stadium with Greg Joseph, who has done quite well kicking the ball. I think it might be one of the times where the defense does well enough, but not enough to hold this team to 20 points or under. I don't have enough confidence in them to do it yet, knowing some of the offensive stars that are on that team.
Yeah, see, that's interesting because this is going to depend on what kind of game this becomes. Because if this is this becomes a shootout, I don't see the Giants winning a shootout game here because they don't play shootout football. And the Bengals are, more. I think that the Bengals are more equipped to play shootout football. So if this game's going to be a higher scoring game, I'm going to take Cincinnati. But I have a weird feeling because it has all the makings of being that. So I actually think this is going to be a little bit of a lower scoring one. And if that's the case, I got the Giants winning this game because I just don't think that they're equipped to play high scoring games. And obviously, it would help to have neighbors in if that is indeed the case, but we don't know that yet. But one of the keys I said was I think we need to have 100 yards combined out of the running game. And what that'll do is I think that'll slow this game down and have fewer possessions, which will actually work in the Giants' favor here. So if you actually look at the last 2 meetings the Giants have played the Bengals, they've both been – the wins that they have both been on the lower scoring side. It was 21-20 in 2016 and 19-17 in 2020. I'm not going to say it's going to be that lower, but I think this is a lower scoring game. I'm going to go on the limb that this is going to be a lower scoring game because you know what? The way this league year has been, we can't figure this league year out to save our lives. So I'm going to go on the lower scoring side, and if that's the case, I think the Giants do win this game on Sunday night. So let's go with a 20-17 final. And I'm going to go with the Giants winning this game at home on Sunday night.
Love it. So,
by the way, Tom, this is going to be a Mike Tirico, Chris Collinsworth, Melissa Stark special, because that's that's my thing. Now it's a special, so
that's right.
Yeah, so I'm going to go with the lower scoring side there.
I don't know if I want to ruin the party here and go Cincinnati or stick with both of you. Go with the Giants. For me, the Bengals have never won on the road at the Giants. I think if this game was in Cincinnati, the Giants have played well on the road. That's the thing. I've thought about it. I placed my pick before the show. Clean sweep is always not great, but Giants win. Final score, I'm going to go – this is going to be one of those weird ones. 24-23, Giants.
Oh,
nice. 1 point win. Yeah. 1 point win. So, but yeah, and that's our show. Adrianna, any final thoughts here before we let you go? We really appreciate you joining us tonight. Means a lot. Happy to chop it up with you. Another New York Giants fan. Hearing your story a little bit, I definitely liked it, and picking your brain on this football team. It's been great.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much for having me. I am one of those fans that, I do my best to be as optimistic as I can while, understanding the realities of the injuries and things like that. And, they're coming off a really great, tough win. I mean, I went into Seattle being like, good luck, Giants. Like, I really didn't think that they were going to look half as good as they did. And the fact that they really dominated time of possession and they did well, I think the fact they're coming off that game is going to mean everything going into this game. Sunday night, prime time at home. So, I'm feeling optimistic than I was probably after, the Dallas loss.
Love it. And why don't you plug yourself one more time for the folks at home if they're just tuning in now?
So I am at New York Giants Fangirl on Instagram and TikTok. I post daily on both of those places. And then at NYG Fangirl on Twitter. And then I have a podcast called Everything New York Giants. And I am doing a Bengals preview tomorrow that should be up either tomorrow night or Friday. So I'll have a new episode coming out just in time for everyone to get ready for the weekend to tune in.
Awesome.
We will check it out.
Note of that. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time as always. Hope you enjoy the rest of your night, and let's hope for a big W on Sunday and get back to 500.
Yes, let's hope so. Thank you guys so much. Go Giants.
Yes.
Let's go Big Blue.
Go Big Blue. That's right. Yes.
That was Adrianna, New York Giants fangirl. Johnny, we have one more thing to show here tonight.
Yeah.
And it's the prediction from our friend Sam.
Cannot be on the show this week, but still going to give some predictions for this upcoming game against the Bengals. Number one, just want to say Daniel looked very, very good. I know he was our player of the week. Just very, very proud of what I was seeing from him. In terms of the upcoming game with the Bengals, the only concern I have is, despite them losing fairly often this season, the Bengals can put a lot of points on the board. They are a shootout team. They go back and forth. We saw that last week with the Ravens. And I just don't think that the Giants are going to be able to keep up with that. So basically, I think the Giants will not be able to score enough points to beat the Bengals. I think that they're going to continue their good playing. And I think the defense is really going to get a hold on Joe Burrow because of one of his injuries to his offensive line. So yeah, I unfortunately don't know if the Giants are going to win, but I was very, very excited to see the win with Seattle. And yeah, I'm going to say my score prediction is going to be 34-27. Oh, also Joe Burrow's hair. I was a fan of it when he buzzed it and bleached it, but now that it's growing out, he kind of looks like a Backstreet Boy. He's pulling it off because he is Joe Burrow, but I would love to see the original OG hair, all one color without the frosted tips. But Joey, if you're happy, keep doing you, buddy.
Joe Burrow's hair. I mean, that was funny. And I played it because I knew she had Cincinnati, so that made me feel more comfortable taking the Giants because when it's a clean sweep for the Giants on this show, hammer the opposing team's money line.
But I'll tell you what, I agree with Sam, not about Joe Burrow's hair, but I will say I think the score, though, is pretty accurate on Cincinnati's side. Like I said, I think if the Bengals win this game, it's going to be on the higher scoring side because that's how they play. I think if the Giants win this game, it's going to be on the lower scoring side because I think they're going to control the time of possession. That's going to be a very interesting thing to watch on Sunday night for sure. But, nevertheless, you know what? The one other thing you would want to watch, want to see with this is even if the Giants don't win this game, show a lot of good signs because you know what? I think that's really all you can ask for. I mean, it sucks that we'll be talking about moral victories, but the way that this roster is, I mean, and I said this to you at the start before we started here. I think Brian Daboll's done a remarkable job. I know he had a very tough first 2 weeks, but given the roster and given the talent, he's done more with less than anybody else in this NFC East. I think he's the best. He's done the best job of coaching in the NFC East. I'm not taking away from what Dan Quinn's done there in Washington, but he's got an unbelievable quarterback play. He's got wide receivers and stuff. Giants don't have those kind of guys on the team, but I think Daboll's done more with less, and the other two coaches, Mike McCarthy and Nick Sirianni, have done less with more. And that's going to be something to watch. If the Browns go there and beat the Eagles on Sunday, Nick Sirianni is going to be the next guy out of town. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, it's been a crazy week of football. Been a crazy year thus far. The Giants are 2-3, looking to go to 3-3. One final statement. Yeah, old school football, guys. Keep the ball out of Joe Burrow's hands. Dominate time of possession. 3 high safety look against the safety. Get pressure. Attack the rookie right tackle. And I think the Giants do have a shot to win this game. Island Boy, appreciate you. Let's go, G-Men. I guess everyone's watching the New York sports games tonight. Too busy to drop us any questions there. But Rangers up 4-0. Yankees playing in the ALCS. Johnny, do you have a score update on that?
It's tied up at 2 in the 7th right now. And let's see here. Yeah, it's 2-2, top 7. Judge up with 2 on and 2 out. So a lot of twos all aboard up there. And obviously, we know the Mets are on to the NLCS, so some very exciting times. The Rangers are on the way. My Knicks are not that far behind. And, boy, I'll tell you, it is going to be a busy but exciting October and hopefully, a great November for our Big Blue for sure and beyond.
100%. And, folks, if you want to check us out for more New York Giants content, feel free to check us out at Big Blue Avenue on Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube for our video content. Appreciate you all. On behalf of Sam Cardona, Johnny Montalbano, my name is Tom Scavetta, saying so long. And without further ado, folks, let's go Big Blue.